Welcome to the GovDiscovery AI podcast with Mike Shanley, delivering actionable expert insight and AI-enhanced business intelligence for defense and State Department markets. Here's your host, Mike Shanley.
Welcome to the GovDiscovery AI podcast. I'm your host, Mike Shanley. My guest today is Howie Lind, President and Executive Director of ISOA, the International Stability Operations Association. Howie served as a Washington, D.C. rep for the floor government group before this, and previous to that served in the Departments of Defense and State, including in the Pentagon, in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, as the Deputy Director for the Iraq Project and Contracting Office. Known Howie for years now. Very excited to finally have you on the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
Well, let's get right into it. I want to start with some high-level thoughts. Being the president of a very important Defense Association, State Department Association, you have a unique perspective on the market. So obviously a lot has happened in 2025. Of all that's happened, what do you see as the most important developments or changes that have affected ISOA members?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and it's certainly glad to be here and talk through this with you. This year, 2025, it's been a challenge, but I tell you, a lot of companies have really are still thriving and have figured out how to adjust to the new reality with the different contracting rules, as well as the geopolitical shifts that have been taking place around the globe. Of course, in the Southcom areas, Southern South America, but also in the Middle East, lots is going on there, as well as Europe still with Ukraine. A lot of our companies are very much engaged over there, as well as Indo-Pacific. So there's still a lot happening. But yeah, keeping track of the contracting changes this year has been a challenge for companies, and we've been right at the forefront of trying to help them with that at ISOA. So back to you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. So what about on the acquisition side? Have you seen new opportunities, or has it been mainly just your members relying on you all for guidance and clarity on what the priorities are of the new administration, both on the mission level, but also on the process, the acquisition side of things?
Well, absolutely. There's been all sorts of changes still ongoing. The federal acquisition regulations being rewritten right as we speak. The FAR, we're going to have a speaker at the summit next month that I'll talk more about. But no, it's the companies, they've been attuned to what the changes have been. And we've been helping them with those, different contracting acquisitions, fewer large contracts, IDIQs, which are the major contracts, which a lot of our companies have relied on. There's a tamp down on those with the idea of smaller, more nimble contracts being let throughout the departments, the Department of War, State Department, and others. So we've been keeping track of that. We have a great relationship with each of the agencies that I'll mention more about that later. But many companies, for some, it was a severe challenge. Others, they pivoted and they're able to smartly figure out their direction to go. So there's been quite a bit of success.
So as we look forward to 2026, and we'll get into the summit in January in a minute here, what do you see as the biggest opportunities that have come out of the shift in the marketplace in 2025?
I'd say just that, as I was described earlier. I mean, these geopolitical events that are happening around the world in the Middle East, our companies are still engaged there. And I'd say going into 2026, again, our summit is in January. We'll have conferences throughout the year. I'll go in more detail there. But our companies are staying engaged and really keeping their ear to the ground on what the great opportunities are within Departments of War and State. Formerly USAID companies have pivoted now that they know it's gone into the State Department, and then not a new agency, but a relatively re-engaged agency is the Development Finance Corporation, DFC. So we've been keeping track and actually have a close contact with DFC to figure out what direction they're going in.
Well, I know that's a question for a lot of organizations out there, is how to best engage with and support DFC's mission. Let's get into ISOA. Now, obviously, there's many associations out there, general GovCon ones, defense contractor associations. Where do you see, well, I'll share my perspective. I think one very unique thing that I'm excited to get into with you later on the show is ISOA's overseas conferences. But where do you see ISOA fitting in as into the market and in your key value and differentiators as a trade association?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. I tell you what, it's first off who we are. Who is ISOA? We really are. So we frame it. We stand at the intersection of government and the private sector, meaning we work to help both sides, both the government and the private sector, with their missions and goals, and we support our U.S. government as well as our allies around the world in challenging places. But around the world, every embassy, U.S. embassy, we have our companies working there. But our really, I think what stands us apart is, as you say, our overseas conferences, but we focus on really four key areas. We call them value streams: business intelligence, meaning helping companies understand what's happening business wise; networking. At our conferences, we focus and we factor in quite a bit of networking time for each of our conferences. Government engagement, meaning our companies can meet and talk to key government officials at our conferences; and the visibility, providing the opportunities for our companies to provide to exhibit corporate and personal visibility for their companies. So I guess it's, I guess another differentiator is that we're out there. Our companies are, at the tip of the spear, on the ground, canary in the coal mine, all sorts of metaphors like that, where they really see and hear what's happening firsthand, and they're nimble and flexible and connected to world situations.
That's one thing I've always appreciated about ISO, in addition to the access to government, the overseas conferences, is just your understanding that we're here for business. We're here to support a mission, but the attendees, the sponsors are here for business. And I've always felt that you, Howie, and your team really have a strong understanding of that and create a really nice platform for networking and making those important connections. With that, let's get into the summits. Can you talk about the annual summit that's coming up in January?
Sure, absolutely. And also, as I pivot to that, let me just kind of describe who our members are, just for people that might not be familiar with ISOA. We cover all industries that are involved in overseas operations for supporting our government: logistics, security, maintenance, base support, infrastructure, health services are a few. There's more, but those are the primary ones, as well as aviation, transportation areas. Our major contractors, major primes, of course, we have several big, large companies, medium sized, but 70% of our companies are small businesses. So to our summit, this is our annual event we hold every year in Washington, D.C. area, either Arlington or Washington, D.C., where they've been. And it really is a culmination of the year's events where we've had the conferences overseas. We're bringing companies and government together for this annual event. We've got a great lineup of speakers and panels and topics set up for it's January 12th, 13th, and 14th. It'll be at the Willard Hotel in downtown Washington. And actually, we've got the first keynote leadoff speaker will be his name is Dale Marks. He's at the Pentagon. He's a senior official there, Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment, which is a key area for us. We also have two congressmen. One is Congressman Joe Wilson from South Carolina speaking, and the other is Congressman Rich McCormick from Georgia, both as speakers. In addition, we have John Tenaglia, who's the Defense Procurement Contracting Acquisition Policy Lead, but also we'll have many other government and contractor speakers on the different panels. As the signups are underway now, we were postponed from early November due to the government shutdown. So this is in January. It's gonna happen, and we're very excited about it. One other aspect, let me just throw out, with your company being in the AI field too, we're having a special panel. It's called the Washington Post Intelligence Council, which actually I'm a member of, but it's going to focus on the tech revolution coming to DC. Basically, we're calling it the Silicon Valley comes to DC, with the defense tech revolution underway, to describe not just AI, but all other aspects of innovation happening within the Department of War and with diplomatic areas too. So with that, let me turn it back over to you. Go ahead, Mike.
And will that be a panel, Howie? Will that be a panel at the summit, or is that a
Yes.
separate event?
That'll be a panel at the summit. Yes.
Yeah, I know that's a great lineup of speakers. I imagine it's one challenge I know with most associations and the industrial base has been just establishing new relationships or reestablishing relationships with the Department of War this year. So it's always impressive to get that that seniority of speakers from leadership there. For a multitude of reasons, including the $1 trillion budget, there are a lot of new entrants, new defense tech companies, new partners getting into the DoD space. Some may be coming to the ISOA January conference as their first DC defense event. What's your advice for a first-timer coming to the ISOA summit, given the market, given ISOA's value proposition and all that? How should they prep? What should they expect to get out of 3 days in?
Yeah, great question, Mike. And actually, I look forward to the meeting these new companies every time. Every one of our conferences, I when I meet people there, I say, "Have you been to one before?" A lot of times, the answer is no. And so I really say the same thing as I'm about to say now: is, well, be ready, be prepared to meet and talk with key companies in your space, in your field. But just be ready to engage in person there. As I said, there's a lot of networking time. Bring business cards. I mean, it's kind of old school, but it's really matters because that's the way you stay connected with people. We have what we call a business matchmaking session at every one of our conferences, which is very advantageous. Our companies love it. They can basically tell their story. It's like speed dating, if you're familiar with that vernacular, but you basically go around the room, move tables every 10 minutes, talk to the different large companies as well as government officials there. Bring your elevator speech. Make sure you got a 30-second run on what you do. That's what the other large companies and government officials want to hear. What is it that you sell? And I guess one aspect of not to do is to say, oh, you just do everything. Nobody does everything. Okay, so really hone in on what your key areas are that you can provide to the government. Prepare ahead of time, of course, see about what the agenda is going to be, who the topics and speakers will be there, and bring notepads to write on, and be just ready to engage. And it's like I said, it's a lot of networking time. So I use the word fun in the business sense that it's just active and a lot of energy that takes place at our conferences. And let me just back up real quick, Mike, with one other aspect of all of our conferences are these sponsorship opportunities. Large, medium, and small companies can all have a chance to sponsor. It's not just for the largest, but that way it provides companies the ability to promote themselves there publicly, either through speaking for a couple of minutes from the stage or on a panel or with all the signage and posters that are there at the conference. So with that, back to you, Mike.
Yeah. So who are some of those high-level sponsors? Obviously, it's going to be good. They'll be happy to have their names mentioned, but I think it's more importantly from people who don't already have the summit on the radar. One of the first things I'll look at, in addition to speakers, is who's sponsoring it. Are these if X firms are sponsoring? Okay, that's probably the events I want to be at. Who are some of those top sponsors you guys already have locked in for this, or I guess this year, for next year, for January?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, a lot of our large companies have it, Abentum, Fluor, KBR, down the list, AECOM, Parsons are the large, as well as other larges, but, and there's several mediums. Let me just say, if companies want to sponsor for ISOA, please contact Roxanne through email or our website, because there's a few sponsorships left that are open for companies to sponsor.
Thank you. Next, I want to move into the global events that you have planned. So last saw you in Bucharest in September, Howie, when I was on your panel at the conference for the NATO procurement, talking about AI and BD there. I found those, not only is it the access to government, but it's actually, I find some of those overseas conferences are just a different way to connect with other members. Everyone's there for a couple days. Could you talk a little bit about what are the 2026 overseas conferences that you all have lined up?
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Mike. So after January, the next big one will be in February, early February in Amman, Jordan, which is our Middle East conference, which we hold every year. We have it in different locations throughout the Middle East. We've had it in Dubai, Abu Dhabi early last year. We had it in Qatar, in Doha. This year it'll be Amman, Jordan. But you're right. It's a great chance for companies to interact locally, regionally, what's happening in that country as well as others. And as we know, there's been a lot happening in the Middle East over this last year. The next event will be, we're having actually a one-day event in March. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. It's a Ukraine Industry Day. Just kind of backing up too, over the since the war started in Ukraine in 2022, we've had or at least every year we've had two conferences in Europe. Warsaw Conference, we held 3 years in a row. This past year, it was in Bucharest, Romania, focused on Ukraine. But then we have an several days conference in Germany every year. Germany being the largest economy in Europe, lots happening there too, with companies involved with a lot of defense areas with all these countries. As we know, all the countries have committed to increasing their ministries of defense spending budgets up to 5% of GDP, which is huge. It's unprecedented. It's never been that big in the past. So there's a lot more defense spending going on there in Europe. So that's in April. We'll be in Germany, Wiesbaden, Germany for our conference. Then the next one is in May. We'll be in Miami. We held a conference there last year for the first time. It'll be we call it the Americas Conference, focused on the border, South America, Central America, which we know is a large, huge effort going on there now too. Then we'll be in Hawaii this will be our 4th year in a row for our Indo-Pacific Conference. And it's really a great way to interact with what's happening with the Indo-Pacific, with Taiwan, with China, with all the countries in that region there. And then in the fall will be, let me back up. The Hawaii conference will be September. We switched it up this year. So September next year will be our Hawaii conference. With the Indo-Pacific. Both with the Hawaii conference and Wiesbaden conference, we're going to have a tabletop exercise focused on potential scenarios in each location. And that's a great effort also for companies to be involved. We had earlier this year in March of 2025, we held a tabletop exercise in the Washington, D.C. area on Indo-Pacific. That was very advantageous, great participation there. But then next year, November, will be our annual summit, just like we're about to have coming up now. So that kind of rounds out the year. We hold these large conferences throughout the year, but we do it all throughout the year, smaller events in person, as well as virtual webinars and topical discussions. So it's quite an active calendar we have. It's hard to keep up with sometimes.
It sure is. So the government, obviously you get senior government officials at a lot of these events. You have all the behind the scenes conversations of inviting them, doing the logistics, all that. Why do they want to participate? Obviously I got some, it's kind of a leading question, but what is it that really gets them interested to put the events on the calendar? What do they hope to get out of it? And I think that's important to understand for the participants coming to the events, to understand
Right.
what perspective is government bringing in. And that can better inform how they plan to engage with either the speaker, or if it's a high-level keynote speaker, maybe with their staff at one of the events.
That's right. No, that's a great question. The government, actually the Federal Acquisition Regulation says that the government they're directed to interact with private sector. And that's really what we are. Of course, we're made up of nonprofits, also non-governmental organizations. But the motivation for government and senior officials to speak is to tell their story, tell what the government's plans are to the private sector, because, the private sector, it's kind of goes without saying, nothing happens without a contract being let to get some service or something built or made or provided for. And so the government is not just obligated, but they want to be able to present to us. And so it takes a lot of effort to get them there, and planning and such logistics, timing and everything, but it's worth it for them and for us.
What have you seen? I don't know if you have a story that comes to mind or anything. What's a productive way for the attendees to engage with government? Obviously, they don't want you to walk up there and take 10 minutes their time after a talk. Everyone wants to connect with them, but also you don't want to just let that opportunity pass. What have you seen as I don't know if one of your members comes to mind, but the most effective way to really engage with government, to use a in-person event to catalyze and build a new relationship, a new contact on the government side?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we try to do, our strategy really, when we have a senior official come, either active duty military, general admiral, or senior civilian, or appointee to a senior position, is to request that they bring their staff with them, the key staff, okay, contracting staff, procurement officials, and then be at the conference with them, but then stay there and participate in the networking, in the business matchmaking sessions. And that really has worked out well in the past, where they get the senior. Let's take an example. The Army Corps of Engineers, they're a great partner of ours too. The Chief of Engineers, the Army 3-star Lieutenant General, they've had several times. Well, they'll come, be the keynote speaker, they leave, but then their staff stays for the matchmaking, for the networking, and it's a great effort because our companies love it, and as well as the contracting official from the government loves it too.
And I'll say this too, what I noticed most recently, again, at the Bucharest conference in September, was the overseas conferences and additional value. Sometimes those high-level speakers stick around for the whole time. They're not just in and out as they might be at a DC conference for the talk. So just another reason to maybe consider putting one of those events on the calendar.
Right. But one other aspect too is that at each of our conferences, you may have been involved in this before, where we have a dinner midway through the conference, like the second night. We call it a president's dinner or a chairman's dinner. And we basically invite all the top sponsors and the ISOA leadership, but also the dignitaries, the senior keynotes that spoke, to come to dinner. And it's a nice social atmosphere for them to be able to interact with our companies and with the ISOA leadership. So that's a good avenue also.
Yeah, I know. I remember the Bucharest dinner was and a great one to connect again with both the speakers who at one of these DC events might have just been in there for a couple hours, but stuck around for a few days.
Right. Yeah. Let me add one other aspect of our summit coming up too. Every year, the last several years, I've been doing it now 10 years in this position. We started an awards program years ago, and we had a separate event for the awards. But this year we were combining with the summit. So actually the third day on the summit, there'll be an awards presentation to some key individuals, 3 Lifetime Achievement Award winners, and then 9 different companies for different aspects, different categories of awards. So that's another nice attribute for the summit.
I think it's nice to combine all those in one event, especially for those not in the DMV, the DC area, who are coming in. It kind of increases the value of that trip and lets them do a little bit more
Right.
in a single week.
Right.
Going back to the prep for the conference. So one thing that is, we focus on is identifying demand signals, solutioning, how to align business development, solutioning with the administrations, with the Department of War's priorities. We'll do for clients sometimes briefings for conferences like the ISOA Summit, who's speaking, not just who to talk to, but what have been their priorities. What are we seeing in the open source intelligence over the last few weeks that speaker's talking about, so that you can go in not just with, hey, here's what we do, I think we're a fit, let's have a follow-up conversation, but I know this is your need, here is our solution, so that that's your starting point. What we found from all this is that's great. That accelerates a lot of that desktop research time where you're paying staff just to go look at a computer, refresh government websites, or look at a SAM.gov trackers or something like that. But what we found is it makes even more important are those human relationships. So that's all great, but at some level, data analysis becomes a commodity and everyone can kind of access the same thing. Those relationships really then become the differentiator. And especially those in-person touch points. Great, this is great. How we're in different states right now, but it's always great to check in person. I'm kind of just talking there. There's not a question. Maybe my question is, what are your thoughts on what is that value of the human relationships now that you've been in this market for a little while? Has that changed? Does it reinforce the value of that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, a great point too. We're still people. We're not robots, right? It's showing up in person, talking to people, smart people to smart people about what's happening in the government. What are the trends for contracting rules coming down the pike? It's critical. I mean, that kind of gets back into being a member of ISOA. A corporate member means that you're part of the family. You have access to our internal lists, contact lists, but also if companies, and this happens all the time, where you meet someone at a conference, either a government or private sector, but it's always hard to get back in touch because people email and phone and text and everything. But then they'll come to me or Roxanne or our senior leadership at ISOA. Hector Villas is our membership director, does a fabulous job, asking us to connect them with that person in government or the private sector, and we do it. And that's one of the great benefits of being a member of ISOA also.
So as we're looking into 2026, what are some of the key market signals that you're going to be tracking to get a sense of, to keep your finger on the pulse of what direction things are going, both on the acquisition side as well as on the acquisition priorities and the mission side?
I'd say just keeping attuned to there's been a lot of a lot of memos that have come out of the Department of War. Secretary Hegseth has sent out quite a few things, as well as their leadership under the acquisition and sustainment, which gets me back to one of the key speakers at our summit. Dale Marks is going to be talking about it. He's actually from the energy field, but his title is acquisition and sustainment, so he'll be talking about. So I'd say energy is one big aspect to look forward to. We have several companies involved in the energy area. But just, back to the, defense and what's happening in the world, again, down south, Middle East, Africa. There's been less effort there with defense, but the Development Finance Corporation, DFC, has been doing a lot of efforts throughout Africa. So I'd say just, keeping abreast of that, back to AI again. Technology is it's a driver for all, everything now. And so I'd say if companies can make sure they're incorporating technology and innovation and AI as much as possible into their value stream, value propositions.
That's I'd love to hear that. That's exactly what we're focused on, is making our clients more efficient so that the
Right.
AI is taking care of the analysis, tracking everything you just mentioned, tracking those signals, so that the clients are going to the ISOA summit in January. They're going into their meetings with government armed with, prepared with the solutioning and understanding the priorities going in, and it just makes everything more efficient. Government wants that too. They want you coming and knowing what their needs are and having prepared solutions that you can start
Right.
discussing. All
Right.
right. Well,
Yeah.
as we wrap up here, oh, sorry, Howie.
Yeah, one
Please.
aspect, back to this whole. I mean, it's important to be able to exactly what you just said, to know or to understand what the administration's trying to do, being able to speak their language. I mean, they use the phrase, safer, stronger, more prosperous, more effective, more efficient. That's what you really have to be striving for. So when you come out with whatever your service or product is, it's in that line of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I always like to ask, so what? What's the so what that you'd like to leave with the defense industrial base and with government?
Yeah. So what? So what? The way I interpret that is why ISOA? We say ISOA, it's vernacular, it doesn't matter, but it's because we're a family, 200 companies. We provide a great service to our companies like yours and others around the world that can get you in front of the right people and provide business opportunities for you. And, again, the intersection of government and private sector, being able to help the government, help private sector in both areas, provide support for our missions and goals around the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. So with the Bucharest conference in September, I was in London right before that at the DESI conference. 40,000 plus people there in London. Then you go to Bucharest, a couple hundred people. I find there's a value in both. Definitely a different networking approach, a different feel at the ISOA event compared to that. But then the AUSAs and the DESIs they also have a place too. But there is, Howie, thank you to you and your team for what you do at ISOA, for the summit, and definitely for the overseas conferences, because there's very much a niche that you all are the platform for connecting to key officials with the combatant commands and with government. So thanks to you and your team for that important work.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it's a great opportunity here to speak to all of you and your network. So thank you. Thank you very much.
As we wrap up, then, what's the best way to contact you or your team? How can they sign up for the summit or learn more about membership?
Yeah, just go to our website, stability-operations.org, has all of our events on there. My email's there. Well, I'll just give it to you. It's Howie Lind at stability-operations.org. Roxanne Kaufman, our Senior Vice President, same. It's Roxanne Kaufman at stability-operations.org. Ginny Maycock is our Communications Director. She's it's G Maycock at stability-operations.org. But, it's through our website that we do a lot of our work. Great social media presence that Ginny provides too, through LinkedIn and other aspects. But just love to have as many companies as possible at our conferences and as members.
Feel free to message me on LinkedIn too, Mike Shanley, if you want to get in touch with their team or if you want to learn more about our Defense Early Opportunity Identification Briefing solution. So with that, Howie, thank you very much for being on the show. I've been looking forward to this one. Great to have you on, and hope to have you back on again in 2026.
Same here. Thanks again, Mike, and great being with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the GovDiscovery AI podcast with Mike Shanley. GovDiscovery AI leverages our team's decade of experience winning federal funding to deliver federal growth intel to sales, proposal, and capture teams working in defense and civilian markets. Each market intel report is delivered by federal growth experts leveraging our proprietary deep data discovery process. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and connect with GovDiscovery AI and Mike Shanley on LinkedIn, or learn more at govdiscoveryai.com.